Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to AWS What's New with Enterprise Support. I am Mark Napoli, and I've got two wonderful co-hosts today, Rovan, Omar, and Mahmoud. Hello, guys.
Howdy, how are we going?
Yeah, really well. So I'll tell you what's new. My haircut's new. I thought I'd do something a little wild for the show. Mahmoud, you have been on the show before a couple of months ago, but just remind everybody what you do and what your area of specialty is here at AWS.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a technical account manager, right? So I do help my customers, support them, whatever the needs are. But by trade, I'm actually a network specialist. So I do also help customers on that front. So anyone that's got anything network related, any customers that want to reach out and get some expertise on some network discussions, I'll get involved. I'm happy to help customers out, talk everything networks, right? So that's my bread and butter.
Yeah,
Well,
nice one.
Had you last time? I guess the last time you've been on the show was at reInvent Recap, end of last year, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And there were very good announcements then. So this the nice thing about the networking space during reInvent time, that's where a lot of the goodie network stuff comes out as well. So yeah, that was a great show.
Right.
I do remember that. And thanks for inviting me again.
Oh, it was a
Yeah,
pleasure to have you, actually. Very sure you've got a couple of
pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Well, I think there's two networking releases for the last, let's say the last month. And I want you to talk about Cloud WAN first, because I spent 5 years as a network consultant building MPLS networks for customers, not physically building them, but designing them. And I read this and thought that can't be right. You can't just create Cloud WAN with a click and a console. But are you gonna tell me I'm wrong? What is Cloud WAN about?
Yeah, I mean, the Cloud WAN is very exciting stuff. So it was in preview before, it was announced, but now recently it's it's available, like generally available today. And like you said, I mean, what does Cloud WAN actually do, right? Now today you could actually do this anyway. So we have customers that are using Transit Gateway to build out their global footprint, right? So today you would create transit gateways all over your regions. You would interconnect them together, and you connect your transit gateways to your VPCs, and you could also connect it to your on-premises network, right? So you could do that today, right? So I like to think as Cloud WAN is the next evolution of that, where you could kind of take all of the goodies that we've learned and actually centralize everything in one place, right? So with a few clicks, you can build out a global network, right? And from there, you could attach your different networking segments or your networks, whether it's data center networks or your branch sites or your VPCs, right? All in one place. You connect it to this Cloud WAN, and from there you have the ability to segment your network, right? So you could dictate who can speak to who, and from there you could have security access controls configurations. So that gives you a better security posture. And also just gives you just one place, right, to monitor your performance, your health, and you do this all in one policy that's you configure in one central place, right? And that could be your central configuration for all your global network. Where before you had to kind of do it separately, right? Okay, I need to do a network construct here, another one over there, and let's work on interconnecting all of that together, right? So Cloud WAN is the next evolution. I like to think of it. Kind of do all that in one place. You could do your network segmentation, and yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff.
Incredible.
You can use it also to segment your network and kind of apply some advanced network and security isolation, regardless if it's on-premise or AWS, right?
Yeah, correct. So what this does, because we have this concept of segmentation, right? So you could actually say, I want my on-premises network, my production traffic to kind of flow and talk to these VPCs, right? And whether that's between your VPCs or to your on-premises network, you could all do that through Cloud WAN through a policy, right? Where before you could have network, security posture or security constructs in one area and then another pocket, and then configuring them to kind of be aligned and centrally managed is very hard to do, right? So, and also has the pre-built automations in place, right? So if you're, before you had to actually do the automation yourself, right? And you got to do that across a global scale. But with Cloud WAN, you could do that from one central place with all the built-in automation that it has in place, and could do attachments automatically get assigned to the Cloud WAN as well. So it just makes things easier, right? So from a security perspective, and just from a configuration and maintenance perspective, right?
Yeah, agree. To be honest, when you have the ability to create these policies across multiple networks, regardless where they are, it kind of gives you a consistent security approach on these large number of VPCs and connectivity. How you're gonna isolate this network traffic? For example, you can isolate your payment transaction or processing in a network from completely different traffic, your corporate environment or other transactions in completely different segments, and apply certain security policies into this to make sure the isolation exists and who restrict access to the right network. So yeah, it's quite a really great feature, I guess, that can help customers your network, the network management, and also the security on these network segmentations.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so the top use cases we've seen with this is, customers wanting to connect their on-premises networks to the VPCs in many regions. So if you don't want to kind of do the one in isolation and manage them separately, you can kind of do it through Cloud WAN, right? So that's a very common use case we've seen with customers. And like you mentioned, Rowan, so the isolating the data using segmentation to improve security posture, it's another big one as well. And just a central place to define your network policy, right? It's just not having to, I mean, back in the old days, we used to kind of go in every device one by one and do the configuration and configuration separately. That's kind of moved to try to centralize the configuration. Now in the cloud space, we've got Cloud WAN to be able to do that, where you can manage everything from the one place. So that's pretty exciting stuff. So this is where we see the common use cases.
I guess another thing to add as well is the automation. So you don't need to go and manually add these VPCs or so on into the WAN. You can, once you create a VPC with certain tag, that tag you've already added to the policy, it will automatically be added to certain segmentation. So that's just really quite good. Mark, you're showing here the console and how to create it. Maybe do you want to walk us through how?
Yeah, I created a test one. Yeah, I just thought, well, if we've got the expert here, let's get his help. So it seemed to be fairly straightforward. I mean, you set up some descriptions, and then an ASN range, which I put in earlier as
so the ASN.
Tell me if I'm doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing. So this is kind of a range that the automation will pick up an AS number when you do configure your different sites within your core policy, right? So yeah, that's just the range that you specify, right? And the automation in place does everything else. Yep.
Here, and do I need to? Am I selecting the number of edge locations that I want?
Yeah.
Based on where I want my nodes to be.
Exactly right. So wherever you're operating, whichever region, that's what we call an edge location, right? Yeah, and it's because we have this default segmentation where like everybody can talk to everybody, right? But you could an example segmentation could be production. Another one could be dev, right? Each one of those is called a segment, right? And that's how you dictate who can speak to who.
Yeah. And you can add multiple edge location, right? So if you operate in Sydney region and Tokyo region and maybe Europe or North Virginia and US, you still can add multiple regions that you can operate in within one segment.
That's correct. Gotcha. And when you onboard that edge location as well, I mean, you already have an existing network policy that you're centrally maintaining. So that could just apply for that new region, right? It's not like you have to kind of reinvent the wheel, reapply the automation that you have in place and making sure that you get it right. You know, it's all maintained already in one place, right? So you don't have to do lots of heavy lifting at all.
Got it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Are these separate?
Everyone's getting excited. I know Cloud WAN is the best. Everyone's getting excited about Cloud WAN. Love it.
There you go, Raven.
I was saying, can we attach multiple policies to the same network or same segment?
It's really one policy, but you could version it, right? So when you have a version that's applied in production, let's say, you could even roll back from that if you want to. So it's kind of one, yeah, because we thought that if you do multiple policies, it could be a bit harder to maintain. This is cool. So you could have a topology graph of what things look like. So once you attach your transit gateways or your WAN sites or your on-premises networks onto the global network, you'll see that all in here, right? And you'll build the peering between your edge locations as well, and it'll map out everything, right? So if you're a customer that's operating in 10 plus regions, right? And you have all the peerings and routing configuration in place, and you're managing that all by yourself, putting it all through Cloud WAN will give you that one central place where you could manage everything, right? And you could have a view of what everything looks like, your health metrics as well, all from here.
So you practically attach one policy to a network segment, and within this policy, you define the rules of control, how you're gonna access the network, and so on. And there's versioning, so you can go one version prior if you've done some changes that did kind of end up being not the right one or something like that. So you have the liberty to go back or roll back. Cool.
That's right.
Sorry, Mark, I did cut you off. What are you saying?
I just want to talk about this page actually. If you go back to the routes page, I mean, if you go to the where you were just before, like you were in the routes, and this is where you kind of do your route configuration as well, right? So you can say for a particular segment, I want to push all my traffic out through this particular region, right? And you've already got one attachment region here. So I could say for this segment, the routing needs to happen through here, for example, right? And this is where you start getting creative about who needs to speak to who, where's the exit points, and you can all do that through here as well, right? So it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
What an amazing service. So can I add additional edge locations once I've made the Cloud WAN? Just trying to see how I would do that.
Yeah, you should be able to. I'm sure if there's an edit button somewhere, or maybe from the overview, or
I couldn't see how to do it.
Okay,
I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, sure
I can see my current edge locations. I just wasn't sure how to add additional ones. Okay, so you can see throughput as well, and
I'm
attachment
thinking
account.
the blog, and it can even if we go through and have multiple network segmentation and added multiple edge location if you operate in different regions, it also provides the network topology and how they connected to each other in a very nice diagram.
That's right.
So it's a very high level of transparency on this service around where our edge locations are and how you're configured into it. So that's great. Thank you. I love that service.
And there's another point I wanted to mention as well.
Last points on this one?
Yeah, there is one last point. So a lot of our customers already have transit gateway, and they do have a global network of transit gateways already in place, right? So a common question that we get is, if we're already using transit gateway, I mean, how should we use Cloud WAN, or should we even need to use Cloud WAN if we are using transit gateway already? I mean, what we say to that is, transit gateway is a great option if you operate in less regions, you're not operating in lots of regions, or if you want to manage your own routing configuration and your own peerings, right? So if you want to do your own automation and you want to have full management on all that, transit gateway is a good option, right? It's not like we are trying to get rid of transit gateway. It's definitely a great service, right? But this kind of Cloud WAN has another level of abstraction that simplifies a lot of these things for you based on best practices that we've seen from customers that have built out these global networks, right? We've incorporated a lot of the good stuff into Cloud WAN, right? So with Cloud WAN, you could use the built-in automation, segmentation, and configuration features from one central place, right? And that's very attractive for lots of customers that have a huge global footprint.
Yeah, transit gateway is definitely a building block there.
And they could interoperate together, by the way. It's not like one or the other. So you could actually, so you could put your Cloud WAN edge location and your core infrastructure in place. You attach your transit gateways from all the different regions into it, and it could centrally connect all your transit gateways. From there, you can choose to them to work in that way, where they could interoperate together, or you could migrate away from Transit Gateway as time goes on and just be left with the Cloud WAN service. So yeah, they could definitely interoperate together.
I'm gonna add a link to the blog, how to create it, how to attach transit gateways if you have, as Mohammed was saying, create a policy, look into the kind of network topology there. Let me put that into the chat before we move to the next one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks, Robin.
no, I wanted to cover something new in the console too, but it's nowhere near as impressive as that. That's amazing. Although it is pretty cool. The support center. So obviously, being part of enterprise support, we have a lot of customers raising support cases, and the experience of raising a support case it's always been pretty good, but it's now a lot slicker, at least in the management console. It's been redesigned for high availability and region redundancy. But I'm going to take you through quickly how someone would create a support case. I'm sure people watching this have probably seen this a bunch of times, but I'm going to show you something afterwards that I think is pretty cool. So, typically as customers go through to create support cases, and here I'm just creating an app flow support case, and I can select web, phone, and chat. We've had customers tell us for a long time, I don't want to log into the console. I want Slack integration. I want easier ways of raising support cases. And so, have either of you used the AWS chatbot with Slack integration before?
I haven't actually.
Yeah, so we actually released this in March. It's a few months old, but the functionality has been sort of steadily improving and increasing. And so I created my own little Slack workspace here, away from my AWS one, and created a few channels in here. And then within a couple of steps, it was actually really easy to integrate the AWS chatbot into my Slack environment, right? So, for those of you who haven't used a bot before, you could typically think of it as another user in your channel that has a whole bunch of smarts behind it and will respond to certain commands. And so, with a couple of clicks in your management console, you can set up a chatbot, and there's an option now to integrate it into Slack or to Chime. It's very easy. You take your workspace ID, you put it in there, you do an OAuth authentication, so it's easy to get across for authentication, and then away you go. You add the app into your Slack workspace, and you can effectively, you can put permissions around it so you can control who. But I've made a role here that is just open to everyone. It's just administrator access for the purposes of the demonstration, right? So, I can do things like, now I don't need my terminal. I don't need the management console. All of the things that you would usually do through your CLI, list your buckets, describe your instances, etc., are all there for you in the chatbot, with the requisite access to view things, including the AWS support service, right? So you could set up workflows where you could raise support cases through Slack, or you can check and describe the current cases that you have currently. Right, so I'm gonna create a support case here. We use the create case. I set the communication body, and so this is a test case, so the engineers will ignore it. I put a subject of this is just a test. I put the service code, because obviously when you raise a support case, it needs to go to the right team. So in this case, let's just say Amazon Elastic Compute, Cloud Linux, and of course, if you don't know all of these off by heart, or you haven't done it before, there's a step-by-step sort of intuitive interface which helps you to put this command together. We'll set the severity code to be low. on the category code to be instance issue. That might be documentation, might be instance issue, API error, whatever the case is. Right. So I can then send that command in, and it intuits what it is that I was trying to do, and says, do you want to run the command or add optional parameters? In this case, I'm going to run the command, and you can see my AWS chatbot has now run that command, and it's given me back effectively the response it would have got through the API if you had made this call through an API. Typically, when you hit things with an API, you'll get back some sort of ID of the thing that you've created. So now I can describe that. I can describe that support case, or I can describe all my cases. And you'll see I've got two here. I raised a test one before. So I can add attachments. I can do whatever I need to with those cases. I can remove those cases if I like to as well.
So can you update?
And then yes, you can. You can update. You can update the body of the case or correspond through the case as well. So
amazing.
That's handy. I think that's pretty handy. And then of course you can describe. Maybe I'll just copy and paste this here. You can describe your trusted advisor checks. Often we have customers saying, "Hey, I just I can't remember. Do I need to do anything for trusted advisor? What's the status of my S3 buckets? Whatever the case is." So you can describe the cases, and then if you want to, describe the results, and then if you want to check a specific result, you can then obviously check that ID as well. So let me just copy that across.
You copied and paste something, Mark. Does that mean it doesn't do autocomplete? So once you type a couple of letters, hit tab, does it autocomplete your syntax?
It doesn't autocomplete in the sort of way that you would expect, but it will do something like this. It's fairly smart. So if I do half a command, it'll say, "Hey, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Do you want to? Did you mean one of the following?" And then it gives you some, the documentation for that particular command. So it can sort of guess what it is that you're trying to go for, and it can do some pretty cool things like if I want to describe my alarms as an example. Fat fingers today in AB Southeast 2. On the CloudWatch service, it's actually going to pop up with the images from the CloudWatch service, which I can then just view in Slack rather than needing to go to the console. So that might just take a minute to generate. Yeah, there you go. So I can, taking some of the heavy lifting off people going into the management console and needing to interact with the management console that way. So that was my finding for this month. I think it was a pretty cool one.
It is cool.
Yeah,
we have customers in FSI who actually don't have access to the console whatsoever. It's all APIs, so that's really good. Yeah, you can configure it as well so that so you've got an IAM role which determines what it is that your chat users can do. So you can obviously limit it if you don't want to give them access to everything. So so cool. I'll pass back to you, Mark, but I know you've got one more on networking, and that's VPC flow logs. What's news there?
Yeah, well, after hearing and seeing the chatbot, it's going to be hard to kind of talk about this in a way that's better than what I just saw. That was pretty amazing, and I could actually see some use cases where I could be in the same channel as maybe the customer, be limited to maybe the support cases, and we could be transparent in what we can do, what we can see all together, right? So it's pretty amazing stuff. Cool. So VPC flow logs. I mean, look, we are all aware of the existing features for VPC flow logs, right? So it's a service that was introduced back in 2015. It gives you insight and detailed telemetry of your flows, right? Of what's traffic is going in and out of your VPCs, right? You could do this at the interface level, the subnet level, and even at the VPC level, right? You could also push these flow logs to CloudWatch and to S3, where you could do further queries, kind of to get more insight into your flows, right? All cool. But it starts getting a bit messy when you have multiple VPCs and you're trying to get more insight of the traffic that's flowing between these VPCs, right? And if you have a transit gateway, normally you would have a transit gateway to interconnect all these VPCs and also have a connection back to your on-premises network. So how do you kind of get a bit more insight into the flows that are traversing through this central construct that we call TGW, right? So yeah, we understand that this was hard for customers. So we released a feature recently for VPC flow log support for Transit Gateway, which is very exciting stuff. I know it sounds easy. It's just one simple feature, which is flow logs for Transit Gateway. But to be honest, this opens up a world of things that you can do, right? From a visibility perspective, from a monitoring perspective, right? And just to get more insight to what your traffic flows look like, right? So with this release, I mean, you could do things like get an understanding of the direction of your flows, right? You could do things like which transit gateway attachments is most busiest, let's say, and where that's coming from. You know, whether if it's a VPC attachment, a VPN attachment, or is it just most of the traffic coming from your on-premises network, right? For a lot of customers, this is great insight to just understand their traffic a bit more, right? They could look at things like top contributors, you know, top talkers for the IP address and port. You could look at the most VPCs that have been transferring, you know, network, and just in general, how much traffic is going through Direct Connect, right? Because obviously there's costs associated to all of that. So you could really drill down into maybe if there's a particular service that's being chatty for no reason, right? So that insight is valuable for customers. And now having that support on the transit gateway level, you can have a better understanding of the flows, what's flowing centrally through your architecture, right? And that's the pivotal point to get flow logs, you know, queried on, really, or just to get more insight on, because that's your central connection, right? This is what everything flows through. So the flow logs for support is really, really important in this space, and it's pretty exciting stuff. We already know customers, big customers, are already turning this on. We've already kind of shared some queries that they can use, you know, to get a better understanding of, you know, the traffic flows. So yeah, like it's a pretty interesting feature.
I guess also to point out, before this feature, which is supporting Transit Gateway, obviously in the VPC flow logs, customers used to configure tools to be able to export all of this telemetry information of their networks, and that's not required anymore. And the other thing is, holistically, as Mahmoud was pointing out, it gives you the ability to gain kind of end-to-end network insights. Especially when you use Transit Gateway, you might use it for different regions. You might use it even with your on-premises. So you have end-to-end visibility of all of the network flow across all of your sites and locations. And that's quite powerful. Any troubleshooting and even cost optimization deep dive, you want to know what actually drive your cost. Is it direct connect, for example, and why is that, or site-to-site VPN, or what is behind, what is set, if you want to investigate even certain IP address or certain network flows. That's quite powerful to have this overall visibility across all of your network, regardless where it is.
That's correct. I mean, another use case is if you're doing a migration and you need to understand the amount of data transferred, right? Getting that view through something like through flow logs is the way to do it. And now, instead of going from one VPC and getting the data there and another VPC, you just really do it through the transit gateway because everything's going to flow there anyway, right? So it's a pretty important feature to kind of facilitate a lot of these use cases and open up an easier way to understand how to best migrate your workloads, how to best approach it. If you need to increase maybe your throughput, right? Or your you need to do another direct connection, maybe just to increase the bandwidth. You know, these kind of things you'll be able to do with this feature to give you a bit more insight.
Got you. I haven't actually configure it in my account. How customers actually can configure it? Do they have to subscribe to it, or can they add Transit Gateway into the flow logs?
It's just like a check button here or there. The same way you do VPC flow logs, it's very, very easy, right? And just have to choose the destination, whether it's CloudWatch or we want S3. And this is where the querying comes into play. If you go to S3, you could use Athena, right? If you have that kind of workflow and you use Athena to query your data, or you could just go through CloudWatch Insights, right? And that's where you can do some queries directly onto CloudWatch logs, right?
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, sounds quite interesting and very a critical feature that lots of customers actually been asking about, to have this insight and visibility into their network end to end. So it is an exciting time if you're in any networking team in the cloud, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. You'll need a transit gateway, I think, in your environment to be able to turn on.
Yes, I don't know. Clearly not.
Believe what I say, it's very easy to. I mean, if you could look at VPC flow logs, it's really just a check button here and there, and some details about the log stream, and it's very simple stuff, right?
Gotcha.
We did have a question. Sorry, I'll just jump in there. Sorry, do you want to touch on one other thing on the transit gateway before we answer the question?
From my end, no. You could go ahead for the question.
Well, it was about if you put a severity code to low out of curiosity. This is to our conversation before. Is there still a time frame to get that done? And I just posted the link to our page that talks about our response times. I've been at Enterprise Support for nearly 9 years, and I can tell you the response targets here are one of the most serious things we think about when we think about customer experience. Not everybody, depending on your support level, not everybody gets access to all of these. Only Enterprise Support customers get business critical system down critical cases, which is a response time of 15 minutes, 24/7, 365, anywhere in the world. But a low general guidance, as we said before, would have a response time of 24 hours. So that's typically something that is very general, not specific to any workload. But it's just something that you would still like to know and get some general guidance on. And then the next question was on support cases, is there any integration when choosing the chat option, like setting up Slack chat instead of console or similar? That is actually something we are looking at, because at the moment, what you saw before in terms of the Slack integration is really the AWS chatbot as an intermediary between the commands that you put into your Slack workspace and the APIs in the back end. We don't have that end-to-end experience of people going into Slack and actually chatting with support engineers currently. That's something that we're looking at very, very closely. So cool. Well, thank you both. Any parting comments before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I guess I was just gonna let go or quickly talk about our next segment next month, which is always on second Friday of each month. We'll try to focus more on the AWS Reinforce. And if you haven't heard about it, Reinforce is a global event run by AWS. It runs in the US every single year to talk about security governance and how can we help our customers kind of enhance their security posture and talk about our latest services and tools into space. So Reinforce just got wrapped last week or so. So our next month we will try to focus on it, tell you what are the main messages from a security perspective from our security leaders, and also if there was any announcement or any enhancements that you want to maybe take advantage of.
Brilliant. Yeah, I read some of the articles that came out of that, particularly Stephen Schmidt's commentary, and immutable infrastructure being a key way to achieve security. Really, really compelling stuff. If you have an interest in security, good call out, Rovan. Thanks.
Cheers.
Yeah. All right, that's a wrap. We will see you next month, second Friday of September, 11 a.m. AES teams, Australian Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. if you're in Sydney. And thank you again for tuning in. See you later.
Thank you all.